My name is Margaret, and I never thought the woman who married my son would be the one to bury me alive in my own family. For years I cooked for her, prayed for her, and even helped raise her children, but at the wedding, in front of relatives, neighbors, and even my own sisters, she made sure everyone knew that I was nothing more than an old woman who didn't belong at the main table. That moment burned me more than any wound. My own son sitting there, silent, while she laughed with her friends, while people whispered and pointed at me like I was some servant. They thought I would swallow that humiliation quietly, like I always had. But that night, as I wiped my tears in the kitchen, I promised myself, this time I will not forgive. This time they will all remember who I am. They always say silence keeps the peace, but silence also buries you alive. For years, I thought if I kept my mouth shut, if I folded the laundry without complaint, if I smiled through the little humiliations, my family would stay together. I wanted peace more than pride, but peace, in this house, came at the price of swallowing myself whole. I remember the first time she corrected me in front of everyone, my daughter-in-law. We were at Sunday dinner, the table full of cousins and neighbors. I had set the rice on the wrong side of the plate. Such a small thing, wasn't it? Yet she looked at me, smirked, and said, "That's not how it's done, Margaret. We don't eat like that anymore." Everyone laughed, even my son, my own flesh and blood. I told myself it didn't matter. But that night, as I washed the dishes alone, my hands shook so badly I almost dropped a plate. That became the rhythm of my life, tiny cuts, one after another. She controlled the way the curtains were folded, the way the children dressed, even how I greeted guests. If I wore my pearls, she'd say they were too old-fashioned. If I told a story from my youth, she'd roll her eyes and mutter, "We've heard this before." And my son, he just sat there, silent, always silent. I'd hear them whispering at night when I passed their door. My name said like a problem to be solved. I would stand there, barefoot on the carpet, heart pounding, listening to my own family discuss me as though I wasn't human. "She's too much. She doesn't understand our ways. Maybe she shouldn't be involved in family decisions anymore. Do you know what it feels like to live inside your own house like a ghost? To cook meals no one thanks you for. To hold your tongue when your heart is screaming." I told myself I was strong, that I was protecting the family from breaking apart. But slowly they erased me. I was no longer invited when decisions were made. I stopped getting phone calls from relatives because she told them I was resting or busy. She controlled the story of who I was, and I let her. I even convinced myself I was overreacting. I'd look at myself in the mirror, in that little bathroom with the cracked tile, and whisper, "Maybe it's not so bad. Maybe this is just what happens when children grow up." But deep down, I knew. I knew she was cutting me out, thread by thread, until I was nothing but a shadow in my own bloodline. The day it became unbearable was not some grand scene. It was ordinary. I was sitting at the dinner table, serving soup. She leaned over to my son and said, loud enough for me to hear, "Don't let her babysit the kids again. She's too forgetful. What if something happens?" My spoon froze in my hand. Forgetful? Me, I raised him, didn't I? I kept him safe when he was a child. I sewed his shirts by candlelight when we couldn't afford the bills. And now, in one sentence, she rewrote history. She painted me as useless, unfit. The table went silent. My son cleared his throat but said nothing. Nothing. That night, lying awake, staring at the ceiling, I asked myself, how much longer can I survive like this? How much more silence before I disappear completely? And that's when I realized silence would not save me. It never had. But if I broke it, if I spoke, if I acted, what would happen then? Weddings are supposed to be beautiful. A time for family, for joy, for dancing until your feet ache. But for me, that wedding was the stage where my daughter-in-law twisted the knife she'd been sharpening for years. The morning of the wedding, I remember staring at my reflection in the mirror. My hands trembled as I pinned my brooch, the one my late husband gave me on our 25th anniversary. I thought, at least today I will feel like I belong. At least today I am family. The house buzzed with laughter, perfume, and music. Cousins rushing down hallways, dresses swishing. Children giggling in rooms I once decorated with my own hands. But every time I stepped forward, she, my daughter-in-law, pulled me back into the shadows. "Margaret, can you make sure the children are dressed?" she said, tossing a pile of shirts into my arms like I was the hired help. I tried to smile, tried to swallow the sting. But then, in the middle of the living room with relatives pouring in, neighbors smiling politely, and even my sisters watching, she laughed and announced, "We needed someone to babysit 15 kids today, and who better than Margaret? She's used to being in the background anyway." The room roared with laughter. Aunts chuckled behind their hands. Even my son smiled awkwardly, lowering his eyes instead of defending me. I felt my cheeks burn hotter than fire. I wanted to shout, to scream, to remind them I was not some maid, but the woman who raised him, who gave him everything. But my throat locked. My hands shook so badly that I nearly dropped the shirts she shoved at me. For hours I stayed hidden in the nursery, buttoning little collars, wiping dirty hands, pretending not to hear the music and clinking glasses outside. Every cheer from the wedding hall felt like another nail in my coffin. When I finally slipped into the reception, hoping to at least sit quietly at the back, I realized my seat, the place where a mother should be honored, was gone. They had placed me at the corner table with strangers, as far from the family table as possible. She sat there glowing in her silk dress, her hair sparkling under the lights, raising her glass in a toast. And when her eyes found mine across the room, she smirked, that smirk as if to say, "Look at you, you are nothing now." I clenched my napkin so tight it tore in my hands. The food on my plate turned to ashes in my mouth. Around me, people whispered, their voices buzzing like wasps. Why is she sitting there? Shouldn't she be closer to the family? My son never looked at me. Not once, and in that moment, surrounded by music, laughter, and lights, I felt more alone than I ever had in my entire life. When the hall grew quiet for the first dance, I couldn't bear it anymore. I slipped outside into the cold night air, clutching my shawl around my shoulders, shaking like a leaf. My tears smeared my mascara, black streaks dripping onto my dress. I whispered to myself, "You don't matter to them, not anymore." But then, as I turned to leave, I overheard her voice from just outside the door, low and sharp as glass. "Don't worry. After tonight, she won't be a problem anymore. I'll make sure of it." My heart stopped. What did she mean by that? People think betrayal comes like thunder, loud, violent, undeniable. But sometimes it comes as a whisper behind a closed door. After that wedding, I began to notice things. Tiny details, little cracks in the smiles that I had ignored before. And once I started looking, I couldn't stop. I remember the first clue, a phone call. My daughter-in-law was in the kitchen, her voice hushed, but the walls in this house carry sound like secrets don't want to stay hidden. I froze in the hallway, pressing my palm against the wallpaper as I listened. "Yes, no, he doesn't know yet. Don't worry, I'll get access to the account. She's too old to notice anything missing." My blood ran cold. She was talking about me, my pension, my savings, the little money I had tucked away after my husband died. That night at dinner, she smiled sweetly as she placed the roasted chicken on the table. "Mother, I made this just the way you like it," she said, her voice dripping with honey. My son beamed at her like she was some angel, but I could see it now. The angel was a mask. Her phone buzzed during dessert. She snatched it up too quickly, eyes darting to me, and in that single second, I knew she was hiding more than money. Over the next weeks, the whispers grew. I'd catch her whispering on the balcony, her voice low and sharp. Once, I walked into the living room, and she slammed her laptop shut so fast the glass of water next to her spilled. She snapped, "Don't you knock," as if it were her house. Even the children began to repeat her lies. My granddaughter once asked me, "Grandma, why are you always so forgetful?" The words cut deeper than any knife. That's what she had been telling them. That I was senile, that I couldn't be trusted, that I was fading away. One evening, during dinner, I tried to speak to say I wanted to handle my own banking, to remind them that I was still capable. But she cut me off with that same mocking smile. "Don't stress yourself, Margaret. You can't keep track of things anymore. Let me handle it. You'll thank me later." My son nodded, silent as always. I felt the rage boil inside me, but I swallowed it again. My hands trembled under the table, clutching my napkin until it tore in half. Then came the night I finally saw the truth. I was walking down the hall, past their bedroom. The door was cracked open, and her voice drifted out. "Don't worry, love. Once I control the rest of her accounts, we'll have enough. He won't question me. He never does. She's already half gone. Half gone." I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from gasping. My heart pounded so loudly, I was sure they would hear. My knees nearly buckled beneath me, and I clutched the doorframe for balance. She wasn't just humiliating me. She wasn't just cutting me out of my family. She was stealing from me, poisoning my son against me, erasing me piece by piece, and in that moment, standing in the hallway with tears streaming down my face, I understood something. This was war. But how could I fight her when the one person who should have been by my side, my son, was blind to everything? I always thought grief came only when someone dies. But grief can come while you are still alive, when you watch the people you love slowly erase you day after day until there is nothing left but your shadow in the corner. After discovering her whispers, her lies, the way she twisted my son's mind against me, something inside me began to crack. I could feel it in the quiet moments, in the silence of the dining room after everyone left the table, in the way my fingers trembled when I tried to hold a teacup. One night I cooked stew the way my husband used to love it. The smell filled the house, warm and comforting. I hoped foolishly that maybe it would bring us together again. But when I set it on the table, she wrinkled her nose and said, "This, too greasy, we don't eat like this anymore." She pushed the bowl away, her perfectly painted nails clicking against the spoon. My son didn't even taste it. He simply set his napkin down and said, "Maybe order something instead." That was the moment I realized I wasn't his mother anymore. I was an inconvenience. Later that week, I tried to call him while he was at work. I wanted to ask if he remembered the days we used to sit together, just the two of us, eating toast in the mornings before school. But the call rang, then went to voicemail. The next day, the same. By the third day, my number was blocked. Blocked by my own child. The walls of the house felt like they were closing in on me. Every picture frame, family photos where I once held him as a boy, now mocked me. My chest felt heavy, my breath shallow. I would sit in my room, staring at the window, wondering if this was how it ended. Not with love, not with respect, but with silence. The breaking point came on a rainy evening. The sky was dark, thunder rolling, and the house smelled faintly of wet earth and candle wax. I walked into the living room only to hear her laugh echoing. She sat curled up on the couch, whispering on the phone, her voice sharp and cruel. "She's losing her mind," she said. "I'll get the house signed over soon. Once it's mine, we'll decide what to do with her, maybe a home." My knees went weak. My vision blurred. A home. She wanted to lock me away, to strip me of everything I had built, every memory, every brick of this house I had polished with my bare hands. I stumbled back, clutching the doorframe, my nails digging into the wood. My chest heaved, my pulse thundered in my ears. And in that exact second, I felt something shift inside me, all the years of silence, all the swallowed tears, all the humiliation at family dinners, the laughter at my expense, the ignored calls, the whispered lies. They gathered together, like a storm inside me. I wasn't weak. I wasn't invisible. I was done being erased. That night, I sat in the dark of my bedroom, the rain tapping against the window, my hands trembling around my journal. I wrote one sentence over and over again until the ink bled through the paper: "She will not win." I closed the journal, my heart pounding with a new kind of fire. But then a thought crept in, cold and sharp. If I fight her, if I reveal what I know, how far will she go to destroy me? Revenge doesn't arrive with thunder. It slips in quietly like a shadow at dusk. I didn't scream. I didn't confront her. No, that would have been too easy for her. She thrived on open fights, where my son could step in and calm me down, while she played the victim. I knew if I wanted to win, I had to become like her, silent, patient, calculated. The first thing I did was watch. For weeks, I studied her every move. When she left her purse on the counter, I memorized the way she guarded her phone like a crown jewel. When she spoke on the balcony, I noted the names she whispered, the numbers she repeated. I became the ghost she always wanted me to be, but this time by choice. One morning, she rushed out to pick up the children, leaving her laptop open on the dining table. My hands trembled as I sat down, the screen glowing like a forbidden secret. And there it was, transfers, thousands of dollars moved from my accounts, my name forged, my trust stolen. But I didn't cry, not this time. I printed everything. I made copies, hiding them in the back of my closet behind my old coats. Evidence, my weapon. At dinners, I began asking questions gently, like hooks baited with silence. How much did that cost? Or strange, I don't remember that expense. Her face would twitch for just a second, her fork pausing midair. My son, blind as always, would shrug it off. But I saw it, the panic in her eyes, and slowly I fed the truth to others. A whisper to my sister when she visited, a subtle comment to a cousin over tea. Strange how my bank balance doesn't match anymore, but of course, she's helping me manage it. I let their curiosity grow like fire. The walls began to tighten around her, not me. Relatives started asking her questions. Friends looked at her differently. And she knew, oh, she knew. One night, she cornered me in the kitchen, her perfume sharp, her voice dripping venom. "Stay out of my way, old woman, or you'll regret it." I leaned in, close enough to smell the wine on her breath, and whispered, "I already regret staying silent." Her eyes widened. For the first time, I saw fear flicker across her face. I began to take back little pieces of myself. I reclaimed control of my bank by visiting in secret, shaking as I signed the forms, my palms sweaty as I changed passwords. The banker looked at me with pity, but I held my head high. Let her find out, I thought. Let her burn with the shock. At home, I played the part of the frail, forgetful mother, in law she had painted me to be. I smiled, nodded, pretended not to notice when she whispered to my son. But inside, I was already building the trap, because revenge isn't just about striking back. It's about waiting for the exact moment when your enemy believes they've won, and then tearing everything out from under them. One evening, I overheard her phone call again. Only this time, the words weren't just about money. "Don't worry. Once the house is in my name, we'll leave him too. He's too weak to notice. I'll take the kids, the accounts, everything. He'll be nothing." I gasped so loudly I had to cover my mouth. She wasn't just plotting against me. She was plotting against him, my son, and in that moment a new fire filled my chest. It wasn't just about saving myself anymore. It was about saving him from the woman he thought was his wife. But how do you save someone who doesn't believe they are in danger? Revenge is not loud. It's not screaming across the table or throwing dishes against the wall. Revenge is quiet, cold, precise. It's the sound of silence after the storm and the look on someone's face when they realize the ground beneath them has disappeared. By the time I gathered enough evidence, the forged signatures, the bank transfers, the overheard phone calls, my hands shook less. My tears stopped flowing. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was flesh and blood again, a woman sharpening her knife in the dark. But I knew timing was everything. If I struck too soon, she would twist it. She would cry, clutch my son's arm, and he, a blind, weak, would believe her. No, I had to wait until she revealed her own venom, until there were witnesses who could see her true face. The chance came quicker than I expected. It was a Sunday dinner. The table was full, candles flickering, glasses clinking. Family filled the room, cousins, neighbors, even the pastor's wife. I sat at the far end, silent, watching. She was radiant, as always, laughing too loudly, dominating every conversation. Then she did what she always did. She turned the knife. "Margaret, maybe you should eat less salt. At your age, memory loss is already a problem." Laughter. Chuckles around the table, my son shifting uncomfortably, but saying nothing. But this time, I didn't lower my eyes. I didn't tremble. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. Papers, copies, dates. I laid them down in the middle of the table, the sound of paper against wood louder than thunder in that silence. "Memory loss," I said softly, my voice steady for the first time in years. "Then how did I manage to document every dollar you stole from me, every signature you forged, every phone call you made planning to abandon my son after you drained him dry?" The room froze. Forks clattered against plates. Her smile collapsed. My son reached for the papers, his hands shaking as he scanned the lines. His face drained of color. What is this?" He whispered, and that's when she snapped. She stood, her chair screeching against the floor. "She's lying, she's crazy, you can't believe her." But her voice cracked, her mask slipped, and the whispers around the table began, relatives gasping, neighbors murmuring. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on hers. "Go on, tell them. Tell them about the other man. Tell them how you were going to take the children and leave him once the house was in your name." The air shattered, gasps, shocked stares, my son's hand trembling as he dropped the papers, and for the first time she had no words. My son stood, his chair toppling behind him, his eyes red and wet, locked on hers. "Is it true?" he asked. Her silence was her answer. He turned to me then, tears streaking down his face, and for the first time in years he saw me. Not the ghost she painted me as, not the scene, an old woman she mocked, but his mother. The rest of the evening is a blur of slammed doors, muffled cries, relatives hurrying children out of the room. She screamed, cursed, threw her glass against the wall, but nothing could undo what was revealed. By midnight, she was gone. Her clothes stuffed into bags, her heels clacking furiously against the pavement as she vanished into the night. And I sat in the living room, the house finally quiet. My hands shook as I held my tea, steam rising into the air. I should have felt triumphant, victorious, but instead I felt the weight of everything I had lost, the years of silence, the humiliation, the son who only now understood the truth. I stared at the empty chair across from me, her ghost still lingering, and I asked myself, now that I've destroyed her, what will become of us? They think revenge tastes sweet, that once you expose the lies, once you tear off the mask, everything will fall back into place. But the truth is, revenge tastes bitter. It lingers on your tongue long after the last word has been spoken, long after the guilty have fled. Yes, I won. She's gone. Her whispers no longer poison this house. Her footsteps no longer echo through my halls. My son finally saw me, truly saw me. The family, the neighbors, the community, they all know now who the villain really was. But victory does not erase scars. I still wake at night, hearing her laugh in the kitchen. I still catch myself lowering my eyes at the dinner table, even though she isn't there anymore. That's what betrayal does. It brands you silently, permanently. Still, if you ask me whether I regret it, whether I regret pulling out those papers, exposing her in front of everyone, my answer is simple. No, because silence kills faster than any knife, and I refuse to die quietly. Now the story belongs to you. You've seen my pain, my humiliation, my fight to reclaim my name. And maybe, just maybe, you've seen a piece of yourself in me, in the ignored phone calls, in the slammed doors, in the way people you love can turn into strangers overnight. So I leave you with this. When the whispers start, when the lies tighten around your throat like a rope, will you choose silence? Or will you rise, like I did, and deliver your final blow?